Syria's new leader outlines four-year plan for elections. South Korea's Yoon faces arrest warrant over martial law. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. This is World Today. I'm Shuhaida Arifin. Holding elections in Syria could take up to 4 years, while drafting a new constitution could take up to 3 years. Syria's new leader, Ahmad al-Shara, said it would take about a year for Syrians to see drastic changes. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, together with allied opposition forces, ousted long-time ruler Bashar al-Assad from power after a lightning offensive. It ended a 13-year civil war but has left a host of questions about the future of a multi-ethnic country. Shara said Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group would be dissolved at the National Dialogue Conference. The group had repeatedly vowed to protect minority groups in the country. According to Shara, the National Dialogue Conference would include wide participation by Syrian society with votes on issues such as dissolving the parliament and the constitution. On the situation in northeastern Syria, Shara said there are talks with all parties to resolve remaining disputes, including with the US-allied Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces. He added he rejects Syria becoming a platform for the Kurdistan Workers' Party to launch attacks against Turkey. Shara also said he hoped the administration of US President-elect Donald Trump would lift sanctions imposed on Syria. Meanwhile, Syria's new authorities have arrested nearly 300 people, including informants, pro-regime fighters and former soldiers, in a crackdown on loyalists to ousted former President Bashar al-Assad. Since opposition forces led by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group toppled Assad 3 weeks ago, ending more than 5 decades of family rule, the new authorities in Syria have intensified efforts to consolidate control. The security forces of the new administration launched a large-scale operation since Thursday against Assad's soldiers. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights War Monitor, among those arrested were former regime informants, fighters, and lower-ranking military officers accused of killings and torture. The observatory said the campaign is ongoing, but no prominent figures have been arrested except for General Muhammad Kanjo Hassan, the former head of military justice under Assad, who reportedly oversaw thousands of death sentences following summary trials at Sadnaya prison. An Israeli airstrike hit the upper floor of Al-Wafa Hospital in central Gaza City, killing at least 7 people. The Health Ministry Director General Munir al-Bash said the hospital was partially operational, providing care to patients with physical disabilities. Explaining further, he said the hospital had been rehabilitated and was getting ready to receive patients. He noted that it had not been targeted by Israeli shelling. It would have been ready to fully reopen in the next few days. The strike on Al-Wafa Hospital came a day after the military ended a raid on Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. An assault that the World Health Organization reported left the facility empty of patients and staff. Since 6 October this year, Israel's operations in the Palestinian territory have focused on northern Gaza, where it said its land and air offensive aims to prevent Hamas from regrouping. However, the military has also carried out airstrikes and shelling in other areas of the Gaza as it presses on with its campaign against Hamas. North Korea has decided to launch the toughest strategy to counteract the United States for its security and national interests. The matter was decided at a set of key policy-setting meetings involving North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and the country's ruling party. The official Korean Central News Agency reported that the alliance between South Korea, the US and Japan has expanded to a nuclear military bloc. It also claims South Korea has become an anti-communist outpost for the US. A set of meetings held from 23rd to 27th December also reviewed the handling of floods earlier this year, including the evacuation plan that brought affected residents to the capital, Pyongyang. Such party meetings and Kim's speeches to officials are typically used by Pyongyang to make key policy announcements. The Sudanese government has strongly rejected a report backed by the United Nations which determined that famine had spread to 5 areas of the war-torn country.
The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Review, which UN agencies use, follows repeated warnings from the United Nations, other aid groups and the United States about the hunger situation in the Northeast African country. The review said last week that the war between Sudan's army and the paramilitary rapid support forces had created famine conditions for 638,000 people, with a further 8.1 million on the brink of a mass starvation. Across the country, the reviews said more than 24.6 million people, around half the population, face high levels of acute food insecurity, adding that only a ceasefire can reduce the risk of famine spreading further. The Foreign Ministry said the army-aligned government categorically rejects the review's description of the situation in Sudan as a famine. The ministry called the report essentially speculative and accused the review of procedural and transparency failings. It said the team did not have access to updated field data and had not consulted with the government's technical team on the final versions before publication.
South Korea is reeling from the loss of 179 people after a Jeju airplane crash landed and burst into flames. A team of US investigators is joining local authorities to probe a possible cause leading to the crash. The plane was carrying 181 people from Thailand to South Korea when it crashed on arrival. 2 flight attendants survived and were pulled from the twisted wreckage of the worst aviation disaster on South Korean soil. Officials have cited a bird strike as a likely cause of the crash, which flung passengers from the plane and left it almost completely destroyed. Video showed the aircraft landing on its belly at Muan International Airport, skidding off the runway as smoke streamed out from the engines before crashing into a wall and exploding in flames. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board said that it could lead a team of investigators, including from Boeing and the Federal Aviation Authority, to join officials in South Korea in probing the cause of the crash. Both black boxes comprised the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder had been recovered. South Korea declared a 7-day national mourning period, with memorial altars to be set up nationwide. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has demanded that Russia admits it fired at the Azerbaijan airline passenger jet before it crashed, accusing Moscow of initially trying to cover up the cause of the fatal disaster. Aliyev made the accusation in an interview to state media at Baku airport 4 days after the Azal Embraer 190 plane crashed in Kazakhstan, killing 38 of the 67 people on board.
Ancaq təəssüflər olsun ki, Rusiyanın bəzi dairələri bu versiya üzərində dayanmağa üstünlük vermişdilər. Bizi təəssüfləndirən və təəccübləndirən məqamlardan da o idi ki, Rusiyanın rəsmi qurumları hansısa qaz balonunun partlaması ilə bağlı versiyalar irəli sürmüşdü. Yəni ki, bu açıq-aydın göstərirdi ki, Rusiya tərəfi məsələni örtbasdır etmək istəyir. Və əlbəttə ki, bu heç kimə baş ucalığı gətirmir.
Azerbaijani officials have suggested that the aircraft was hit by a Russian air defense systems as it tried to land in Grozny, capital of the Russian Republic of Chechnya. The Transport Ministry in Kazakhstan said that the aeroplane's black box would be sent for analysis to Brazil, which manufactures the Embraer plane. Still ahead, Georgia's new president sworn in amid political showdown. Investigators are probing South Korea's Yoon over his declaration of martial law said they have filed an arrest warrant for the suspended president after he failed to report for questioning.
The probe team said the Joint Investigation Headquarters filed an arrest warrant for President Yoon with the Seoul Western District Court. The application by investigators marks the first attempt to forcibly detain a sitting president in the country's constitutional history. Yoon was stripped of his presidential duties by Parliament over his short-lived martial law declaration this month. A constitutional court ruling is pending on whether to confirm the impeachment. Yoon had been summoned 3 times for questionings but refused to present himself each time, including by yesterday's deadline. The Conservative leader faces criminal charges of insurrection, which could result in life imprisonment or even death penalty. He is being investigated by prosecutors as well as a joint team comprising police, defense ministry and anti-corruption officials.
Michael Kavelashvili was sworn in as president of Georgia amid a political crisis after the government froze European Union application talks in a move that sparked major protests.
Outgoing President Salom Zurabichvili, a pro-EU opponent of the ruling party, said in a defiant speech to supporters outside the presidential palace that she was leaving the residence, but Kavelashvili had no legitimacy as president, which is mostly ceremonial positioned. Zurabichvili said that Kavelashvili was not duly picked as the lawmakers who chose him were elected in an October parliamentary election that was marked by fraud. However, the Georgian Dream ruling party and the country's election commission said that the election was free and fair. After taking the presidential oath in parliament, Kavelashvili said history clearly shows that after countless struggles to defend the homeland and traditions, peace has always been one of the main goals and values for the Georgian people. Kavelashvili went on to praise the traditions, values, national identity, the sanctity of the family and faith of the people in the country.
Croatia's President Zoran Milanovic will face conservative rival Dragan Primorac in an election runoff in 2 weeks after the incumbent narrowly missed out an outright victory yesterday.
The incumbent President Milanovic won the most votes in the first round of Croatia's presidential election, but fell just short of a majority and will have to go to a second round. According to results released by the State Electoral Commission, from nearly all of the polling stations, Milanovic won 49.1% of the first round vote, and Primorac, backed by the ruling conservative HDZ party, took 19.35%. Milanovic pledged to his supporters who gathered in Zagreb to fight for Croatia with a clear stance, one that takes care of its interests. A strong lead for Milanovic, whom surveys labelled a favourite ahead of the vote, raises serious concerns for Prime Minister Andrej Plenković, HDZ. The election came as the European Union, a NATO member country of 3.8 million people, struggles with biting inflation, widespread corruption and labour shortage.
Jimmy Carter, the former U.S. president and Nobel Peace Laureate, who rose from humble beginnings in rural Georgia to lead the nation from 1977 to 1981, has died. He was 100 years old.
Carter has been in hospice care since mid-February last year at his home in Plains, Georgia, the same small town where he was born and once ran a peanut farm before becoming a governor of the Peach State and running for the White House. Carter was the longest-lived U.S. president, an outcome that seemed unlikely back in 2015 when the Southern Democrat revealed he had brain cancer. However, the U.S. Navy veteran repeatedly defied the odds to enjoy a long and fruitful post-presidency after 4 years in the Oval Office. During his single term, Carter placed a commitment on human rights and social justice, enjoying a strong first 2 years that included brokering a peace deal between Israel and Egypt, dubbed the Camp David Accords. After leaving the White House, he founded the Carter Center in 1982 to pursue his vision of world diplomacy, and he was the recipient of the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize for his tireless efforts to promote social and economic justice.
3 migrants died in an attempt to cross the English Channel from France to Britain, taking this year's casualty toll from failed clandestine crossings to confirmed 76.
The boat that was to take the migrants ran into trouble near Blériot Lake, a public beach in Sangate, close to the French Channel port of Calais, at around 6 a.m. local time. Several people fell into the water after clashes broke out amongst migrants as several groups attempted to board the already overcrowded vessel. French Maritime Services said around 50 people were given emergency help on the beach by government services or non-governmental organizations, with many in a state of hypothermia. 41 people who fell into the water and were left behind by the boat were treated at Sangate's nautical base. Britain's Border Security and Asylum Minister Dame Angela Eagle blamed the ruthless criminal running the small boat trade for the tragedy for overloading people into unseaworthy vessels. The total numbers of migrants arriving in England in small boats since the start of the year is estimated at 36,000.
The Peruvian government has closed 91 ports after raging waves slammed the coast. The Navy reported that in the northern region of Tumbes, local authorities rescued 30 fishermen impacted by the rough sea conditions.
Los hermanos pescadores de Acapulco, donde ha sido el oleaje más fuerte, tenían muchos problemas y no podían esperar más tiempo para poder ser rescatados, como lo acaban de decir. El día de hoy, gracias a Dios, ya han regresado aproximadamente 30 pescadores.
Although no fatalities have been reported, the closure of ports, beaches and cancellation of activities have affected local economies, including fishermen who have ceased operations since the wave intensity increased on 25th December. The municipality of Callao, close to capital Lima, and the location of the country's main port, also closed several beaches and barred tourists and fishing boats from venturing out. According to a report by the Peruvian Navy, the swells in the coastal area are expected to last until Wednesday, though it is likely that abnormal swells will persist after that date.
Tens of thousands of people demonstrated in Valencia, hit hard by recent floods, in the latest such protest over the government response to the unprecedented natural disaster.
The 29th October tragedy killed 231 people and devastated swathes of the eastern Valencia region, leaving thousands of victims to spend Christmas without loved ones, homes or property in the traditionally Catholic country. According to regional police, some 80,000 people again denounced the handling of Spain's deadliest natural disaster in decades. Much of the popular anger has been directed at the head of the Valencia region, Carlos Mazón, with protesters shouting "murderer" and "criminal" and carrying signs demanding Mazón to resign. The anger is acutely raw in Valencia, which bore the brunt of the disaster. Of the 231 people killed in the tragedy, 223 were in the Valencia region. 4 people are still listed as missing. Much of the anger has also been focused on the fact that many residents received telephone alerts after water was already engulfing their homes, while some municipalities went without aid for days, relying on volunteers for immediate rescue works.
Next up in sports, Liverpool trashed West Ham to go 8 points clear. The Olympic Council of Malaysia (OCM) wants competition venues to be centralised around Kuching when Sarawak co-hosts the 2027 SEA Games. OCM Secretary General Datuk Muhammad Nazifuddin Najib said they do not want scattered venues like the recent Malaysia Games held across 9 divisions in Sarawak in August.
Datuk Muhammad Nazifuddin said the Malaysia SEA Game Organising Committee is expected to be formed by mid-2025 to ensure Malaysia is ready to take over leadership of the Southeast Asian Games Federation after the SEA Games in Thailand from 9th to 20th December next year. He said the OCM has also asked National Sports Association to submit proposals regarding plans for the SEA Games in Thailand and Malaysia to determine the list of sports and additional events for the biennial games. Apart from Sarawak, Pulau Pinang has also expressed interest in hosting snooker and billiards, while Johor is keen to host football. According to the Southeast Asian Games Federation Charter and rules, organisers can include additional sports beside the mandatory ones like aquatics and athletics, provided at least 4 countries participate. The final list of sports and events must be communicated to participating nations at least 15 months before the SEA Games begin.
Now moving on to football, Liverpool thrashed West Ham United 5-0 at the London Stadium to stretch their Premier League lead to 8 points early this morning, with Mohamed Salah once again in irrepressible form.
The Egyptian has been enjoying a vintage season despite uncertainty over a new contract and scored once and provided 2 assists as Liverpool dismantled their outclassed hosts. Salah now has 20 goals in all competitions this season, has scored and assisted in 8 Premier League games and appears to be firing Liverpool towards a 20th league title in Dutchman Arne Slot's first season in charge. Liverpool have 45 points from 18 games, with a surprise package Nottingham Forest their closest pursuers with 37 points, having played a game more. 4th place Chelsea could cut the gap to 7 tomorrow when they take on struggling Ipswich Town. Liverpool had scored 9 goals in their last 2 league games, and the only surprise was that they could not make their superiority tell in the opening stages at West Ham. Meanwhile, Manchester City won for the first time in 5 Premier League games thanks to goals from Erling Haaland and Savinho for a 2-0 victory at Leicester City in manager Pep Guardiola's 500th game in charge. Savinho netted his first goal for City in the 21st minute when he pounced on a rebound from Phil Foden's long shot after Leicester goalkeeper Jakub Stolacic pushed the ball into his path. The Brazilian fired into the roof of the net from a tight angle. Haaland, who has 2 goals in 8 league games in the worst stretch of his Premier League career, doubled City's lead in the 74th minute when he headed home a looping cross from Savinho. The champions' second win in 14 games across all competitions meant they climbed 2 spots to 5th place with 31 points. Leicester remain in the relegation zone in 18th.
AC Milan have reportedly sacked Paulo Fonseca as coach following a 1-1 Serie A draw at home to Roma. Rumours about Fonseca's possible departure had dominated Italian media coverage, with Milan setting 8th in the domestic table and 12th in the Champions League.
At the game early today, Fonseca became the centre of attention just before the break when his protest over Tijani Rangers going down inside the box led to his dismissal for dissent after the referee waved play on. Fonseca left Lille to replace Stefano Pioli as Milan head coach in June, signing a 3-year deal. However, the Portuguese coach, 6 months in charge, have seen the Italian side unable to maintain a consistent run of form, and he was dismissed list. Milan are 12th in the Champions League phase table and currently headed for a place in the knockout playoffs. The club is owned by United States investment group Redbird Capital, who bought Milan from Elliott Advisors in August 2022 in a deal that valued the club at 1.2 billion euros.
Former Italy defender Fabio Cannavaro has been appointed new head coach of Dinamo Zagreb. The 2006 World Cup winner and Ballon d'Or recipient returns to management after a brief stint with Udinese earlier in this year, where he led the side for only 6 matches.
According to a statement, this decision made by the club's management and sporting director was unanimously approved at the 15th session of the executive board. The 51-year-old was previously caretaker manager for China's national team and Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia. He replaces Nenad Bjelica, who was dismissed following lackluster results in the top-tier Croatian Football League, where the side is third, 7 points behind Rijeka at the top. Cannavaro will take over the team after the new year with his first match at Arsenal on 22nd January in the Champions League group stage, where Dynamo are 24th, the last spot in the playoff section.
Moving on to tennis, the United States champion of one of the last 2 editions of the United Cup claimed victory but needed to struggle for 7 hours at the mixed teams event. Americans Coco Gauff and Taylor Fritz finally earned a 2-1 win over Canada in the mixed doubles rubber, which ended in the early hours of Monday morning in Perth.
Gauff beat Leila Fernandez 6-3, 6-2, but Fritz went down to Felix Auger-Aliassime after failing to serve out victory while leading the set 5-3. Auger-Aliassime carved out a 4-6, 7-5, 6-3 result after being treated for injury 5 games into the match. It took the concluding mixed doubles to decide the outcome, with both nations plus group member Croatia still in contention for the knockout stage of the tournament. The Americans clinched the tie 7-6, 7-5, with Gauff serving out victory. Fritz felt only relief after redeeming himself following his defeat in the singles. Despite the defeat, Fernandez showed her serving qualities against the big-hitting Fritz on several occasions. The 22-year-old saved 3 break points on her serve in the first set, but eventually came undone by the Americans with a clinical tie-break performance.
And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, Syria's new leader outlines 4-year plan for elections. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Shuhaida Arifin. From river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching.